Hello, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone. We are here every Thursday, every Tuesday. We are here with our analyst Kwame Gonza to bring to you what's happening in Africa and also what's happening globally that will affect Africa eventually. So we salute you and apologies for we are late. However, we are here very much prepared. Welcome, Kwame, once again.
Thank you so much, Mahlet. Thank you so much, and greetings to everyone who's watching us.
Thank you, Kwame. Yeah, so today we are going to discuss about what's happening, or rather, actually, the tensions over the South China Sea that seems to resurface again as a result of the drills that have been conducted by China surrounding Taiwan. Now, with regard to this, we are going to analyze it step by step, as we bring the Pan-African perspective to you. The main objective is also its education. So we will give you a background on this. So we're going to discuss what caused this and then the implication globally, but ultimately we are interested to hear how it's affecting or how it will affect Africa, if it's not affected Africa yet, I mean, by this time. So Brother Kwame, there is a growing tension over the South China Sea. So just before I go ahead and start to throw the questions, let us play this. Yeah, and stay here.
Okay.
The choreographed theatre of military might. Released by a China state broadcaster today, showcasing their strength not just on land, but in the air and on the sea. Another warning from the superpower as they begin what they described as 3 days of combat readiness patrols in the Taiwan Strait. The latest escalation comes hours after Taiwan's president returned from a 10-day visit to America. At an event in Taipei today with the US House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs,
Yes, that's it, Mahlet. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So this just happened actually 3 days ago. This drill
Yes.
happened. That's
Yes. Yes.
how up to date we are, by the way, here at Connect Africa. But so watching that, what causes this is happening in the South China Sea. Okay, so China is doing it as we saw now from this video. It's surrounding China, Taiwan, right? Uh, why the confrontation between U.S. and China over this? Uh, while actually the United States is much far away from this place. If anything, it should be those countries in Asia that should be concerned. Why? What is the cause of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mahlet. First of all, thank you for watching. If you are on the line, anyone who's watching us on Connect Africa, and we want to encourage you to invite other people. This is a new media platform, which was founded by Mahlet here. Mahlet is our founder, Connect Africa. And the purpose is to bring information out there to all Africans and to make analysis on world affairs, with a Pan-African context, from a Pan-African view, from an African perspective, because we see analysts from the rest of the world, China, we see the West with their big news, media, networks. But we don't hear Africans coming out to analyze world affairs. So whenever there is a vacuum, that means that vacuum is supposed to be filled. So that is the vacuum we as Africans, we have come to fulfill. So Mahlet, thank you very much for, pioneering this network, Connect Africa. And we have not only stopped at analyzing, but we are also on the ground working with other organizations and putting on the front, on the front in the space, in the open space, we are putting out the African narrative and working with other organizations like Africans Rising, which is working on a borderless Africa, but also within ourselves, we are running also petitions which are being supported also and have been endorsed by Dr. And PLO Lumumba. PLO Lumumba, you all know him, the famous PLO Lumumba. We are working with him. So he has endorsed these petitions that we are pushing. The petitions are about a united Africa, a single military, and also a single currency and a single passport. So Mahlet, you will help me and you put those petitions down in the description so that people can access them. So with that being said, once again, I want to thank everyone who's watching. Share the channel. It is very, very important. That is the only way we can be encouraged. And also, if you are out there watching and you feel that you need to support this work, come out and support this work, because we are not merely media people who are here to do likes and we are not putting up sensationalism because we want quick likes, but rather we have come to teach our people and inform, and also to do the work on the other side. So the topic today, as Mahlet has rightly mentioned it, we are trying to understand what is happening within the South China Sea. We have seen that China did military drills, as we have shown on video, a few days ago. Those military drills, they happened, over a period of 3 days, and they involved surrounding Taiwan. And so Mallet asked me, what is the cause of these tensions? Because other people have seen them as tensions, as the United States has claimed that China is raising tensions within the South China Sea. And as again Malik has rightly mentioned, that the United States, of course, is 12,600 miles away from the South China Sea. What does the United States also want in this region? So these are two questions which I'll attempt to answer I will attempt to analyze and answer the situation. I always like to approach issues from a historical point of view, because things don't just happen. The things which are happening today were built up over a period of time. Now, it is the same with the situation that we are seeing in the South China Sea. After 1945, there was two groups when China was being unified. There was a group which was called the Kuomintang, which disagreed, or they were called the nationalists. They disagreed with the group which fought and was led by Mao Zedong, who were the communists that time. So when they unified China, they had a civil war after fighting off the enemy, after fighting off the Western world, and fighting off also the Japanese. So they developed a difference inside, the country, just like how you see that the United States also had its own civil war. It had a United States civil war whereby the North and the South were fighting against each other. When you go to Vietnam also, after fighting off France and getting independence, they developed a division and they fought the North and the South. This is what we see also in Korea. So what is different here is that sometimes in these conflicts in other parts which are not the West, the United States and the West comes in and supports one group. Like when we look at this period of when Vietnam was getting independence, after it had gotten independence, and when we look at Korea also, the world had been divided that period into the communists and then the capitalists. Or that was the period of the Cold War, whereby we had the United States on one side, and then we had the Soviet Union on the other side. And of course, China also was not immune to this. It was not immunized from this kind of state of affairs that was happening during that period. So the communists, the Mao Zedong group, and Deng Xiaoping and all the others were being supported by the Soviet Union. Of course, actually, if it was not for the Soviet Union, the communists in China would not have won the war. But because they were supported by the Soviet Union used to send military advisors. That is why you see that China coming together with Russia is only natural, because historically they have been friends. So even though they had a brief break and they had some disagreements because of the policies that were happening during that period in the Soviet Union. So China had a break during that period with the Soviet Union because of difference in approach on how they were conducting actually the fighting against the capitalist system. Now, on the other side, the so-called nationalists or the Kuomintang, they were being supported by the United States and the West. So when the communists defeated them on the mainland, Chinese mainland, they ran to Taiwan, which is an island. And that island, they started governing it from there. And they had hopes that they would come back and defeat the Communist Party in China, that which had come in 1949. But it did not happen. The Communist Party instead was able to strengthen itself further and transform itself into a governing body, from a revolutionary army into a governing body, which we see today. So now, after 1949, China was very isolated. It isolated itself, of course, for certain reasons, not because they were practicing a bad government, but they isolated themselves to reorganize their society that had been decimated. If you remember very well, they had been decimated by Japanese colonialism. Other people will ask, why are the Chinese and Japanese having some sort of hostility, even up to date? They have that hostility because the Chinese have never forgiven the Japanese for going to colonize them. And the other thing is the other group is the United States, of course, and Britain and all the other European powers. They went in and colonized China again, and they introduced drugs. They forced, opium. If you hear about the opium wars, in which China was humiliated, which China calls the century of humiliation. It is during that period that China was colonized, and Europe and the United States forced China to take opium, opium, and the Chinese people were forced to consume opium so that the West can become rich, because this was the main commodity that period, because there was no oil, these cash crops and all that, they were not mainstream. So opium was the main trade during that period. So the United States and Europe was becoming rich by imposing this on China. So China has never forgotten these, the way it was treated. So, and up to date, if you look at the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party as a ruling, body, President Xi Jinping said that China would never accept to be colonized again. It would never accept to be humiliated again. And even in China, it is a law that if you are caught with drugs, you will be hanged, you'll be executed. Even though this is not what is practiced in other countries or in other parts of the world. But it is because the Chinese remember this history of humiliation that they were forced to consume opium and drugs by the same West that is preaching right now. And so it became rich, and to the point that when China was defeated during the Opium Wars, it had to secede, it had to give up control over Hong Kong for a period of 100 years. And those 100 years, I think they ended recently in the 2000, either 2007 or 6, somewhere there, that Britain returned Hong Kong to the control of China. So China had to sign off Hong Kong over to the control and colonization by Britain, because it lost the Opium Wars. So China has never forgotten all this. And that is why you see that China has strengthened itself. When you see its military, it has been strengthening itself. Of course, its economy, that one is a testament to everyone who has been around it. We have seen how fast China has grown as an economy rapidly. It has not just grown fast, but it has grown rapidly. But that is not the subject for today. The subject for today is Taiwan. Now, in 1949, Taiwan is, goes, the nationalists, they ran to the island of Taiwan, and so they got the support of the United States, of course, and the Western world. And so they started building a country for themselves over there in Taiwan, to the level of a country which we see even today. So China now came to restore its relations in the 70s with the United States. When it came to restore these relations with the United States, agreements were signed, about 3 of them. And in those agreements, it was agreed that for the Chinese to restore their relations with the United States and, of course, Europe and the others, they have to recognize that China has sole control over Taiwan. Taiwan belongs to China as an island, and they agreed and signed these agreements, of course. And so even up to today, Taiwan does not have a seat in the United Nations. Taiwan is represented, the representative of Taiwan in the United Nations is China, because China is the one who is recognized, China is recognized as the sole representative of all that territory, the mainland, Hong Kong, and even Taiwan and Macau, okay, and of course Tibet. And this is recognized, of course, everywhere, or majority of the countries recognize it, apart from a very few countries, maybe like Guatemala and Belize. Recently, Honduras also had recognized that. There's a few small countries which recognize this. But countries like Honduras, of course, recently even broke off the relationship with Taiwan and recognized Chinese authority over this area of Taiwan. So what the United States has been doing is that it has been violating these agreements. So how has it been violating these agreements? The United States and its allies, they have been claiming that they are coming to Taiwan to protect democracy, a territory which belongs to China. Okay, it is like violating a nation's sovereignty. It's like China going, let me say, to Hawaii and starting to give Hawaii, support and military support and selling weapons to Hawaii so that Hawaii can rebel against the United States. So this is what China is going through. So the United States and its European allies, what they are attempting to do is that they are attempting to bully China. Even with all China's economic might and military power, they are attempting to bully China, in broad daylight by, of course, exercising and engaging in the behavior which they have engaged in the past, of disrespecting their agreements which they have signed. Of course, we can talk about, for example, the Iran nuclear deal. They came and canceled it. For example, people like Trump, they signed, the G7 nations signed an agreement with Iran, which is the Iran nuclear deal, but the United States came and pulled out of it, just like that, without consulting the partners. We signed the Paris Agreement on climate change. The United States came and pulled out of it. So that trend is continuing, like that. So this is the behavior which China is saying that we will not accept. And President Xi recently mentioned and said that we will not compromise when it comes to our territory. When it comes to Taiwan, we are not going to compromise anything. That is during the visit of President Macron of France when he visited China. So China's President Xi mentioned that they are not going to compromise when it comes to China. If it means going to war, they will go to war. And so that is why we are seeing this tension rising. The United States has been selling weapons, fighter jets, missiles, all these to Taiwan, which is a territory of China. It is a full territory of China, and it is recognized by majority of the nations at the United Nations, by the majority of the members at the United Nations, and even the UN itself. So this is the cause of the tensions that is happening in the South China Sea, that we are seeing China asserting itself further, in addition to the assertion that China has made in the past. Of course, we have mentioned how it has been, mediating in the Middle East, how it has been, to the extent that even right now, Saudi Arabia and Yemen have started discussing, an end to the war in Yemen that has been happening there, where Saudi Arabia has been supported in the past by the United States, to bomb Yemen. But we see that China's influence now is strong. China is playing its hand now strongly. So in the South China Sea, not only in the South China Sea, but also in the Middle East, that it was able to bring that mediation, much needed mediation between Iran and Saudi Arabia, who have been, at each other's throats for a very long time. And so we see that assertiveness that China is also coming out to say that we will not allow to be bullied. We will not allow bullying that is happening across the globe. We are no more a small, nation. We are not a third world country, and we have developed our country. We have worked very hard, and so we will protect ourselves and we will protect our territory. So that tension that is happening there is majorly because the Chinese have said we want to unify Taiwan, with China peacefully, but that peaceful reunification is not being welcomed by the majority of the West. And so we have people like Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan, because it is not allowed. She's supposed to get permission from from Shanghai, from Beijing, but she went to visit Taiwan. This is where even majority of the problems started from. In August 2002, Nancy Pelosi came to visit Taiwan, and it raised a lot of tensions. It put the world in a very dangerous situation. It put the world during that period, under a lot of tension. The majority of us thought that even a war is going to break out. And China is a big country with a lot of nuclear weapons. So we were terrified during that period that a war might break out and a nuclear war might be started, between the United States and China, because China would shoot down Nancy Pelosi's plane when it is attempting to enter into China. So Nancy Pelosi went there in 2000. China restrained itself. Today, what we are seeing that is causing this commotion again, this tension again, is that the so-called president of China, who belongs to a party which believes that Taiwan should get independence from China, visited, of course, Guatemala, and from there she went and met the United States Speaker of Parliament in the United States. And so this is what angered, China, to the extent that it said that this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable that the so-called Taiwanese president went to the United States to visit the United States House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. So China was trying to send a strong warning. So it came and surrounded the island with its military power, with its coordinated military power. It wanted also to demonstrate to the whole world, and especially the imperialists, that it had the capacity to surround the island and cut off any intervention that might come from the United States, because the United States has an island which is close, in the Pacific. Is called Guam, where it has a big military base. Actually, this island is under colonialism by the United States, and today, when you look at it, it is only the United States which is a colonial country right now, which is remaining with the colonies like Guam, colonies like Guantanamo, colonies like Diego Garcia. So United States is the only country which is a colonial power right now. It has colonies, but at the same time, it is going around. It is colonizing even Hawaii. Hawaii itself. Hawaii did not accept to join the United States peacefully. They went in and took Hawaii by force. They went and took Guantanamo Bay, which belongs to Cuba. They occupied Cuba by force. They occupied Guantanamo Bay by force because this is a territory which belongs to Cuba. They took it by force, and now today they are talking about people taking territories, in Ukraine. They went and took over Diego Garcia, like I mentioned. They went and took over Guam. So these are all colonies. 4 of them, they are colonies of the United States. So China is saying that even though they are here close near Guam and they have allies in Australia, we want to demonstrate that we have a coordinated military in air, land, and sea, which is able to demonstrate that we will take over Taiwan and will cut off anyone who wants to win in this. So that is what you saw as military drills, which were demonstrating that the Chinese military has the capacity to surround. It doesn't want to fight. It doesn't want a war. It doesn't want to cause any, destruction in Taiwan. But it is demonstrating that it has the capacity, to surround the island and take it over, and even stop anyone who will be coming to intervene, whether it is the United States with its aircraft carriers, the military aircraft carriers, which it has, on the sea, and all the other warships that are there. So this is the tension that we are seeing in the middle of the South China Sea and this region, Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Really, very, that was insightful, to say the least. And as our viewers here, one of our viewer calls it or said it, a good history recap. That's what you gave us, and I was wondering, and how the trend of pulling out, breaching agreements, and continued bullying countries, continents, and the more it displays that character, meaning the United States, and the more the world is saying, no, we are not having it, enough. And this is exactly what they are faced in Africa when they bring when they try to pull Africa in the Ukraine Russia war. Africa said, no, we are not having it. We are our own. We have our own interests, and that is it. And not only in Africa, also in Asia and Eastern Europe, also more and more. And also, as we see, Europe is also. It's a kind of splitting over the Ukraine-Russia war. They were on the front line supporting Ukraine. Now things seems to change, but we are going to come back about that on Tuesday. Now back to the South China Sea. It's really it will be important really it's to shed light what is the import. Okay, it's a military base, like for in Africa, for example, we see that in Djibouti, like AFRICOM everywhere, of the US drone bases, military bases. What makes it really interesting? Is it because like the Red Sea, a trade route, why it is so important, the place? If you can just quickly shed a light on that, and then we move to the second question.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. So what the United States wants in this region, of course, it is not very clear. It claims that the Pacific Ocean is a very important, trade route. That is what it claims. So we don't know what kind of trade route. Of course, these are the justifications that we hear. It says that it is protecting democracy. In Taiwan, it wants to protect the democracy in Taiwan, and it wants to protect the trade route. But in actuality, of course, we know that these are false, narratives. They are lying. The purpose is to continue to colonize the world, to continue to bully the world, and to suppress China. Of course, these are the objectives. We mentioned that the attacks which we are seeing and the fueling of the war in Ukraine to fight against Russia, actually, that war is a fight against China. So now that's the reason why the United States left Afghanistan, because it wanted to focus its resources on China, the fight against China. So that is why you see that the propaganda against China in Western media, that China is enslaving Africa, China is giving debt to Africa, that propaganda has been ramped up. And networks like CGTN, for example, which is a Chinese media network, has been banned in places like Britain. Networks like RT News of Russia has been banned in in Britain. It has been banned in Britain. It has been banned in the United States. It has been banned in majority of the places. You see, so this is a big, a problem, that there has been a deliberate attack on China. And why is that? Of course, there's a couple of reasons. You can talk of the semiconductors as one of the people in the comment sections, say that because China is Taiwan is the leading supplier and producer of semiconductors, with, of course, using American technology, because the Americans saw it important to prop up Taiwan so that Taiwan can develop very quickly, and then maybe use that as a pretext that they want to protect their semiconductor industry. It is possible, but I think China has the capability of producing its own semiconductors. But China, what is consuming China more is not really semiconductors. It is its territory. You can even take your semiconductor manufacturing facilities and carry them and take them anywhere you want. But China wants to exercise absolute control over its historical territory. And so we see the United States carrying out this colonialism and pushing this colonial narrative and pushing this negative narrative against China, even in Africa, and saying, the Chinese have majority of the debt of the continent. But when that is true, that is not true when you look at the figures. China has only about 12% of the debt. We see that a majority of the debt in Africa is held by the IMF, by Western institutions, Western corporations, Western governments, majority of Africa's debt. So these are the people who are killing us with debt, but they are not saying the truth. And of course, it is normal for them to spread lies and misinformation. But it is also important for us as Africans, especially, to stay alert to this misinformation and these lies that they are spreading. Is important for us to continue to educate ourselves and say, stop spreading lies. China is not, China is not indebting Africa, is not enslaving Africa through that. China is doing trade with Africa. You people are the ones who are not doing trade with Africa, and instead you are enslaving Africa because you hold majority of Africa's debt through your colonial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. These are the colonial institutions. So we need to bring this information to the understanding of the people. So to answer your question, the issue is about containing China within its own backyard, because the United States would not allow you to come to the Gulf of Mexico. It would not allow you to come to Canada and befriend Canada and put and sell weapons over there if you were China. It would not allow, even in the 60s, the Soviet Union went and put missiles, nuclear missiles in Cuba, and the United States, wanted to start a nuclear war all over the world. This brought the world on the brink of a nuclear war, because the United States was so furious. Why, how can the Soviet Union bring missiles at our door? It is not their country. Cuba is not their country. Cuba is a sovereign state and a member of the United Nations. But the United States was claiming that it's their back door. Cuba is their back door, so there's no way you can put, and it's unacceptable. So this same behavior, others also are saying we cannot accept it. Russia is saying we cannot accept also this behavior. If this is how you want to behave, this is how we will also behave. So it's the same behavior which China is resisting and saying we will not accept this. But in their hypocrisy and their corrupt media platforms, of course, they continue to push, the narrative that they are right. They continue to flip, the script and turn what is right and turn it upside down and say, what is right is what is wrong, and what is wrong is what is right, and you have to accept it. You have to accept it by force, and that is what they are telling the world. But we have seen that the world now is waking up. We have seen the world is waking up. Hence, Saudi Arabia, countries like Saudi Arabia, now they are trying to find their own solutions because they cannot put up with this bully anymore. Countries, in the African continent are also saying, no, we cannot put up with double standards. We cannot continue, this hypocrisy. And so the United States now remains in a position where it is isolated, and its European allies. Okay, and if you look at it critically, actually, the United States and its so-called European allies, who call themselves the international community, are just 20%. They are white countries. They are just 20% of the world. So they are up against 80% of the world and trying to bully 80% of the world. And this is what we have called white supremacy. This is what our ancestors have continuously called white supremacy. So 20% of the world population is trying to bully 80% of the world population. And now 80% of the world population, the brown people, the black and brown people of the world, are saying, no, this cannot happen. It is not going to continue to happen. We will not accept it. So then they use those, twisted, that twisted logic that they are spreading democracy, when we know what they are pursuing is rather, colonialism. And this is what we see that is driving the United States, then its decline, even within its border also, borders, that the economies are not doing well. We have seen demonstrations in France, for example. We have seen homelessness on the streets of California in the United States, increasing homelessness. Bridges are falling in the United States. So it is, critical for them that they continue to spread violence and go on to plunder the world. Because if you look at the United States, the United States is only 5% of the world population. Yet they consume majority of the resources, about 20% of majority of the resources, more than 25% of global resources. When you are talking about oil, for example, they consume more than 25% of global oil, production, and they are just 25%. So they have been growing fat, while other people who are supposed to own these resources are growing lean, and people are starving. And they are growing fat and flying all over, in aeroplanes, are hopping from one continent to other to continue bullying so that they can continue to grow fat. And the people of the world, what they are saying is that we cannot accept this. We also have to grow rich. We have to build our economies. You cannot continue to grow fat at our expense. And so this is the reaction that you are seeing that is coming from the people. But the United States, as usual, as people like Kwame Nkrumah wrote it long in his book, for example, Africa Must Unite, the reason why the white man came here and is that they wanted markets for their products, finished products, and they wanted materials to make those products. They wanted materials to make products, and they wanted the market. So they will plan the markets from here, take them to Europe and America, create jobs over there for their people, create wealth, and leave poverty over here, and bring back those products to sell them to us. You have seen iPhones, you have seen laptops, you have seen what? You have seen automobiles, Ford, you have seen Mercedes-Benz, all these, Volkswagen. These are the products which they are making and bringing back using our materials and then selling to us. So that's the process that they want to continue. They want to continue that system. You have heard them say, you have heard them talk about rules-based order. So when they are talking about rules-based order, they're actually talking about white supremacy. They are not talking about anything else. They are talking about a colonial order which they created after 1945. That colonial order, which was a continuation from what Britain lost as a colonial power and what Europe lost as as a colonial people, as a colonial continent. So that order was continued, was transformed in 1945, and it was given to the United States to lead it. So that's the rules-based order. It is rather not the United Nations Charter. So what people like Blinken, the Secretary of State of the United States, and Joe Biden, and even Obama, and all that group of corrupt neoliberal politicians who are going around the world and talking about the rules-based order, they are not talking about actually the United Nations Charter, because the United Nations Charter, they have been violating it at will. When you are talking about, for example, the attack on Vietnam, the attack on Iraq, all these were out of the international, internationally accepted rules and norms, which govern the international community and member states of the United Nations. They were absolute violations of the United Nations. So I want people to understand that when they talk about the rules-based order, they are actually talking about white supremacy, that we must continue to colonize the rest of you, and you have to accept. So that is what they mean when they stand, people like the Secretary of State of the United States, the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and all the other diplomats. When they stand and speak like that, they are talking about colonialism, that they want to continue to colonize us. And I want that to sink in very well the next time any of your politicians entertain these people to talk, like that, before your nation, it is because these people have been bought to allow them to speak like that. They are representatives of this neo-colonial system, and such people, whether presidents or who, they must be resisted across the whole African continent. So the United States, that is its target that it wants in the in the South China Sea, and even in the Ukraine war, which you are seeing that is happening there, that it is pouring weapons over there. Now it is attempting and continuing to pour also weapons in Taiwan. So if you are talking about democracy, then you should not be encouraging violence. You should rather be encouraging, dialogue, people sitting on the table and say, this is not how democracy works. Democracy doesn't work with violence. Democracy works with dialogue. Let us dialogue. It is a contest of ideas. But because it is not democracy and is colonialism, then the United States uses the same methods which Britain used, which the same methods which Germany used under Hitler. Actually, I consider the United States a fascist state, just like Hitler, because the same behavior that Hitler had is the same behavior that the United States is using with its ruling class. Go out there, bomb countries, and take over the countries. It's the same thing which the Hitler and Mussolini of Italy, the fascists, and the Nazis, the Nazis, the same thing which we are using, they were using. So I consider United States a fascist and Nazi, state, because the behavior is the same. So if they are doing the same thing that the Nazis and the fascists in Italy were doing, then what is the difference really? There's no difference. Because Mussolini too claimed that he's a Democrat, and even Hitler claimed that he's a Democrat, and so the behavior is the same. The behavior is absolutely the same. So what is driving the United States is a lot of factors, and those are the factors which are broken down. But in a nutshell, it wants to continue to colonize, the rest of the world, and to eat what belongs to the rest of the world, to eat the bread, to take bread from the rest of the world, which is starving, and continue to grow fat itself. And this behavior, I believe that all of us across the globe, we should resist this behavior. Thank you so much, Mahlet.
Thank you so much, Kwame. I mean, that's even the first question. I said just quickly shed a light why the place is so important. But I don't know if any one of you here,
It's a big topic. It's a big topic.
It's very, it's really rare when you are educated of something for it to be so sweet, and you want it sometimes even like a music on a repeat, and I felt like, this has to go on. And as you talk, a lot of phrases and sentences going in my mind, and I was like, this should be in a cut. I'm gonna cut him on this one, and on that one. And it's really, and how history is important. I mean, without, as Marcus Garvey say, I really like that phrase. Without history, a person without history is like we are with a plant or a tree without its root, and we really have to know, including our own history. So history is so much important to have not even a better understanding, but even really an understanding of anything. Otherwise, we are, lost. We are just like those mainstream media who are just coming and feeding us news. Very, very interesting. I wonder, I hope not only Africans are taking note on this, but also I really hope Americans will take a note on what you said. And sometimes I wonder, maybe they should have an advisor from other countries that they are bullying and going and confronting, rather than their own, because they are so much of themselves. The more even the world confronts them. So yeah, I really hope. But the days of America being that, the world even unipolar, being a superior, it has gone long ago. Hopefully they will wake up from that dream. Now, quickly, let me just say what is commented here by our viewers. Some of them I have displayed it at the Pan African Society Community Forum, I think. They said, yes, our lack of collective vigilance and resistance has emboldened these people. I think well said. Definitely, we agree with you, brother Ola. We see you. Thank you for being here again. And he even said, unfortunately, I missed the first 20 minutes of the session, but now he's here.
Oh, you
Kay,
can go back and watch it. You can go back and watch it
yeah,
when we finish.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. And then another one by the name K says the US hegemony is coming to an end. Yes, that's what we think. So the CIA head was in Saudi Arabia to tell them they are not happy because Saudi is accepting Iran and Syria. I mean,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So the United States thrives on chaos. In during the Bush era, Bush commissioned an inquiry into the energy state of the United States because during his period, his rule, George Bush, United States started experiencing power shortages, load shedding, like you see in our countries, majority of our countries, which don't have enough electricity. So they put up a commission which was led by Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was the vice president, of course, of the United States under Bush, George Bush Jr. And what they said is that George Bush actually is the one who made those remarks and said that the United States depends on energy resources which come from the rest of the world, the majority of the unstable places, spaces of the world, the unstable, countries and territories of the world. So they like this chaos. They like to manipulate, and they are happy. They were happy that Saudi Arabia has friction with Iran, so they can thrive on this. They can use one against the other. The divide and rule, the divide and conquer tactic. That's what they thrive on. And China is not interested in that. China is interested in peace and stability. It wants to see these people working together. It wants to see harmony, people having harmony. And the Chinese generally, in their culture, they believe in harmony. Harmony is a core tenet, even when you look at Confucianism. So they believe in harmony and stability. The United States does, and Europeans, they don't believe in that. They believe that for them to thrive, they must cause another person's disaster. They must cause harm to the rest, before they can thrive. And so that is why we see that when they were in Africa, even though they have been in Africa, for example, for a long time, more than they have been in Africa for more than 600 years, but their trade altogether is less than what China has when it has been here for just 30 years. China has more than around 360 billion, I mean 200 and more than 260 billion dollars with Africa in trade. The United States, 50, I think is around 54 billion dollars. Yet the United States has been very rich for a long time. So you ask why? Why is our trade with the United States not at that level of maybe more than 1 trillion, which our trade with the United States should be to the level of more than 1 trillion? But it's because they have been eating our lunch. They have been taking our resources for the construction of their country. And so you don't see that balance. You don't see that trade. But rather, when you examine, like the report, the UN report, which came out about, which was talking about the illicit financial flows, outflows out of the African continent, which was they estimated around $89 billion, but which, of course, Pan-Africans have estimated that it is more than $200 billion annually. It was pointed out that majority of that money actually is going to US and European capitals. That is where the money was traced to. So it thrives on chaos and the misfortune of others. That is why you see organizations like the IMF, they were thriving while they were imposing things like the structural adjustments on the African continent, which devastated the continent. And so they are coming back. We see them, they are coming back as they are demonizing China. They are coming back on the African continent to consume the growth that has happened when China was growing and it was transferring that wealth and growth on the African continent. They want to suck out that wealth from the African continent and take it to the United States. So that is why you see organizations like the IMF and World Bank are coming back on the African continent in a major way. So to answer his question, or to complement, to add on his, comment, that is what I would say, that the United States thrives on the chaos of others. It thrives, on divide and conquer, and that is what you are seeing in the Middle East, that the CIA had to come and complain to Saudi Arabia, why are they not included in the settlement of conflicts? But it is because the Saudis themselves have seen that these are agents of chaos. Everywhere they go, they cause chaos, destruction. They are killing people, innocent people. They are destroying nations, you see. So everyone now has realized that this is the enemy of world peace. Everywhere they go, these Europeans, they are destroying things. They are killing innocent people. 1 million people dead in Iraq. 100,000 dead in Yemen. Dead in Syria. You are bombing everyone with drones in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. You have destroyed the country. You have seized 7 billion from Afghan people who are dying of poverty. At the same time, you are talking about human rights. So this chaos, the people are tired of it. The world people, the rest of the people, I said, of the world, that 80% of the world population is tired of this chaos, is tired of this hypocrisy, is tired of this, these double standards. And so that is why you see that the Saudis and Iran, they instead decided to do this agreement, this peace agreement, this reinstatement of a cooperation between themselves. They decided to do it with China and sideline the United States. So the United States now feels isolated, but that is how it should be. And I believe that we should continue even in Africa in that direction. And you can see that even the African Union, the Africans during the settlement of the conflict, the rebels in the northern part of Ethiopia who were disturbing the country, that the African Union decided to sideline the United States. So it is happening all over. So it is not only the Saudis who started it. It is actually Africans who started it, that we sidelined them and refused, that we don't want the United States to be involved in these settlements. So actually Africans also, we should get credit, because we started this. We started the idea of sidelining and isolating the United States from our affairs. So we should continue in that direction. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Kwame. Yeah, it's a very deep topic. I mean, the days of the US being seen solely just dumb is gone. Yeah,
Absolutely.
as simple as that. Now the world have options. Africans have options, Yeah, so every time I try to go to the second question, something come up. Our audience here, Kabuda, says our president in Kenya has welcomed IMF with open arms, but this is for later, I think, because after you revealed that, evidence backed how most of the debts that Africa is owing is IMF. Not really how they project it in their mainstream media, that it is China or something. So let's move to our main topic for today. It is also, this one is also important, but let's say that a war broke out in this South China extension. What does that mean? What is the implication for the world? What does it mean? Of course, our concern is Africa, but I really want you to specifically talk about Africa maybe later, or you tell us about the world and then you continue by specifically focusing on Africa, because I mean, relatively Africa seems to me, I mean, according to science, much closer to Taiwan than the US to this place. So if the war broke out, what's happening? What does that mean to the world first, and then we come to Africa? Back to you, Kwame.
Yeah, so Asia has not had very many wars, in the past, since the 60s, 70s. It has not had very many wars. Compared, like, for example, to areas like the Middle East. So it has been relatively stable. That is why you see that Asia has been able to grow because of the stability that it has been experiencing. And so you see countries like Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, South Korea, even North Korea, it has grown. So these countries have grown because of stability in the region. So the implication now is that uh, this, if it is pushed, if the United States continue to push in this direction, this is likely to break out into a major war, or even leading to a world war that might lead to a nuclear war in this region. And it is very, very, dangerous. It is extremely dangerous. It will affect the world economy, greatly to slow down the world economy. But this is what they want. You saw that they started the China trade war. Trump, which he started, and the IMF, of course, it warned. IMF and World Bank warned that this trade war is going to lead to the decline, to the slowdown in world economy, because China is the major manufacturing hub of the world. So if you disintegrate and you withdraw the United States, from that trade, and you decouple China and the United States, then it's going to slow down the world economy. And lo and behold, that is what we are seeing, that before this trade war was started, China's economy was growing at around 7 to 8%. Right now, they can barely, their target is 5% right now. So the Chinese economy has slowed down. And this is what actually the United States wants, and the Europeans, because they fear that China, which has grown up to a GDP of 18 trillion, is about to overtake the United States, which is at 24 trillion. It's just remaining about how many trillion? About 6 trillion, which is very possible in a few years if you have continued to grow, at a rate of 10%, 7%, 8%. China would easily pass the United States. But even that, when you look at PPP terms, China's economy right now is much bigger than the United States by around, I think, 30. China's economy right now by GDP PPP terms, purchasing power terms, China's economy is around, I think, more than $30 trillion. And the United States is around, I think, 25 trillion. So it has already overtaken the Chinese economy. So the implication of this war, if it, this provocation which the United States is continuing, these tensions, if they are continued to be pushed, is that the world economy is going to slow down, and all of us are going to be affected. Even on the African continent, our economies are going to slow down. And of course, we've mentioned already, the IMF is back in the African continent. It is attempting to suck out the wealth that we have built up when China was growing, because China's growth also had been reflected, in the African continent, because Africa now is been selling a lot of material, resources to China for manufacturing. So our, development also is going to slow down. Our growth economically is likely to slow down if this war breaks out, because we will not continue to sell. China will be engaged in a war, will be wasting majority of its money in the war. Okay, that is number one. Economy will slow down. Number two, we will experience a nuclear war, which no one likes, which is very dangerous, because the United States, what it is targeting is that it wants to start a war, and under the pretext of protecting Taiwan, the United States wants to go in China and destroy China's industries. That is what they want. They want to destroy China's industries and destroy Chinese growth, so that China will not surpass them. So China will struggle to rebuild, So when it is struggling to rebuild, then they will get a chance to resuscitate themselves. And this is this is a very serious issue. When you see companies corporations withdrawing from China, United States companies and all Western companies withdrawing from Russia and closing down business completely, that they will not do business anymore in Russia. This is a very serious issue. This is a very serious issue. So I would like all Africans to take this serious. They should not. No one should take this as an African as a joke, because these things that are happening are serious. These are serious decisions. For a company which is operating with millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, to close down shop, and so we have withdrawn from Russia, where we have been making a lot of profit. It is serious business. Is because there is a political force driving them behind, that something big is coming, and what we are bringing is inevitable. And what we see, that is war. It is absolute war. Economic sanctions, for example, economic policies which are against another country is war. This is declared war. So that is what we are seeing, that the world is at a threat of a nuclear war, and the world is at a threat of falling back in poverty, because China, as a manufacturing center of the world, will slow down and stop manufacturing, and it will stop consuming, and Africa will be in a very, very bad state. And I know you want to talk about Africa, but Africa is going to be in a very, very bad situation. We have seen China cooperating, with Africa in various, enterprises, infrastructure on the continent, industrial parks, and the West is not happy. America is not happy that these people are helping us to build this infrastructure, to build these industrial parks, build, manufacturing. They are not happy because they want to see Africa suppressed. They want to see Africa as a primitive place, as you saw one of the European diplomats mentioned and called Africa a garden, that is their garden. They just come here and take things which they want. I don't know, call it a farm or a garden. It is a farm.
Garden. A garden.
So,
the EU foreign minister, actually.
Yes. So they come here. Is a garden. They should just come here and take out what they want and go back to their house, which is Europe and the United States. So they want to see Africa underdeveloped. They don't want to see high-speed trains, for example, on the African continent. Like trains like what we see was built between Djibouti and Addis Ababa with the help of the Chinese. The industrial parks that were coming up, of course, in Ethiopia. And in that, train, railway lines, roads, majority of the roads. China has built in Africa more roads in the last 30 years than the whole European and American group has built in the last 800 years. So I want that to sink in. So these people, they don't like to see us develop. These people, they want to destroy and steal everything which we have. These people are our enemy. These people are Africa's enemy. And I'm talking about the West. I'm talking about the United States and Europe and Canada and all these, Australia. These people are very dangerous to the African, continent, because they want to continue to exploit our resources and leave us in poverty and impoverish us, and even not only extract our material resources, but also extract our human beings. And go out there and use our intellectual power, all of it. They want to use it in the West in constructing their countries, while Africa continues to be a poor, territory. And that is why they say it is a farm, because they want to come and extract the goods always. It is a garden, whatever they called it. They want to come and extract the goods, material and human resources. That is why we see our experts are majority out there on the, out of the African continent, because the conditions here have been made unbearable. So I've run into the Africa, as you know. I'm very passionate about the African issue, even though I was still talking about world affairs and the effects of this on world politics.
But indeed, yeah, you can continue. Let me just say this. Africa, now, first of all, Africa is part of the globe. So what is happening in the world should concern us, and our leaders or the African Union can have as a matter of fact, should have an opinion, just like they have an opinion on what's happening in our territory. That's how they bully. I mean, Taiwan, this South China Sea is more than 12,000 kilometers from the United States. But look how the US is bullying them and intervening as if it is their own matter. So for Africa, Africa should have an opinion because it will be affected, and it is being affected as we speak. Because some people think that that's none of our business. No, it is our business. Yeah, so with that being said, please go ahead and continue specifically what are the implications on Africa, and if there is for that matter, if there is any response so far from Africa. Are we
Yes,
involved, just like the Ukraine-Russia war, having a say on the matter?
yes, absolutely. It is unfortunate that even though Africa is going to be affected by these happenings, these events, they are likely to affect us in a major way, especially when you look at the war in Ukraine, which is, Ukraine and Russia, they are very close to the African continent. So if anything, if a nuclear war is fought, it would affect the African continent, and it would not affect the United States. It would affect first Europe, Middle East, and it would affect the African continent. So our leaders who are playing with fire by supporting the United States, I know some of them have engaged in that inappropriate behavior. There's an African a man in the United States called Claude Anderson, who calls this inappropriate behavior when Africans abandon their own interests and the interests of their people and start acting in the interest of the white man. He calls this inappropriate behavior. We have these leaders on the African continent who have decided to act and behave in an inappropriate way and carry out this inappropriate behavior, that they play with this fire, and they push the interests of these people, the Americans. And of course, I'm not saying that all of them. Majority of them, of course, have refused. We see countries like Eritrea who have outright voted against United States interests, at the UN, and the others, of course, majority of them have abstained and say we don't want to get involved in this. We want to be neutral. The countries have said that we want to be neutral in this conflict. We don't want
But
to be
to
involved.
be neutral is a nice way of saying no, don't you think
Yes,
so?
yes, it is. But I think in some way you need to come out. You need to come out if you are going to be affected. And of course, what you are saying is right. That is what they are trying to express. Majority of them are saying no, okay. But in some cases, you need to come out outright and say to the bully that this behavior is unacceptable, because we are going to be affected directly if the war breaks out, a nuclear war breaks out between Russia and Europe and whatever. The United States will be very far and pushing nuclear weapons because it has nuclear weapons on the European continent. So if a nuclear war breaks out, it will affect the Middle East, it would affect Europe, it would affect Africa. The United States is miles of, is thousands of miles away. Our people in the northern part of Africa and Central Africa and Sahel will be affected by this, and maybe some, and in the Horn of Africa would be affected by this nuclear dust that is likely to come up. So the African Union needs to come out strongly, and it's the same thing which we are trying to push here, and we are trying to state here that if the South China Sea breaks out, Africa's growth is in jeopardy. It's going to slow down, because our growth for the last 30 years has been dependent on the growth in Africa as major suppliers of raw materials. And currently, I don't see any serious plan for industrialization by the African heads of state, because they have still refused to come together. They have still refused to come and work together. Even those who are conscious, they have failed to come and unify together, and form a strong force that would stand up against imperialism. And so they have left our continent open for imperialism to thrive in and bully whoever it wants. And so they have left the door open for divide and conquer. So if this war breaks out in the South China Sea, it is likely, actually it is not likely, but it will affect us in a major way economically. Our economies are going to slow down because they have been growing because China has been growing. As you have seen that when China was growing at 10%, 7%, 8%, also some of the fastest growing economies in the world were in Africa, because this growth was tied to China's growth, the growth that was happening in China. And so even when China has slowed down, we see that again, countries in Africa have slowed down a little bit. And so this is reflective of that slowdown in China, that if the conflict breaks out, China will stop working. When it stops working, then we will not sell our materials anymore. And even if we are not selling materials, but we have all the other trade partnerships with China, because China is a huge market. Even you see Europe doesn't want to, neglect that market. It doesn't want to lose that market. You have seen Macron, you have seen Vice Chancellor, you have seen the Chancellor, German Chancellor Scholz, go to Beijing because they don't want to lose this market. So Africa too cannot afford to lose this market, and it needs instead to further push more so that we can sell our commodities there. We can sell majority of what we can manufacture. We need to partner more with China in building industrial parks. So we are likely to be affected as Africans, and so we should play a major role. What should we do? We have to play a major role in denouncing, warmongering. We have to denounce warmongering as Africans, and we have to do it with, we have to affirm it. We have to do it assertively as Africans. The African Union needs to get off, its, a seat and get permission, mobilize the heads of state to give it permission to issue strong statements and say, we are not welcoming this idea of the war in Ukraine, for example. The United States needs to stop pouring weapons into Ukraine. Instead of mentioning issues mutedly and say we are looking for negotiations, you have to mention the problem that it is unacceptable because Russia wants to negotiate. A small country like the United States with 300 million people cannot continue to dictate to the world, and the world keeps quiet. Majority of the 20% of the people, the white people in the Western world cannot continue to dictate to 80% of the population of the world. So we need to fearlessly come out, even though many of our people and politicians fear the United States, but we should give power to the African Union so that these statements can be issued collectively, that the behavior of the Europeans and the United States will not be accepted, that we cannot allow provocations in the South China Sea because it puts world peace, international peace, it puts international peace in jeopardy because we are part of the citizenry of the world. We are part of the citizenry of the world, and we cannot afford to have war anymore. The nuclear war, if it happens even in China, because China will not accept to be bullied around that area. It's not going to accept. And as we have seen, it has come out assertively. So in the same way, we Africans, we need to come out assertively to stop this war. And we cannot stop this war by being, timid as Africans. We have to speak out assertively and say, United States, this is not the way to de-escalate the issue in Ukraine. United States and Europe, this is not the way to de-escalate the conflict, in the South China Sea. You need to stop powering weapons. You need to stop poking. And if we send this clear message to the United States as Africans, I believe that we will also be respected. We will be respected, and they will listen. They will start having a second thought and say, the world now, all the world is against us. We have seen that India has assertively stated that it doesn't want to get involved in United States affairs. It has its own economic interests. So it has continued to buy oil from Russia. It has continued. So this is the same spirit in which we also Africans have to come out, because after all, what is the United States giving us that China is not giving us? What is it the United States? Nothing. When they came, when it has sent its diplomats across the African continent, what have they brought for us? Nothing. Arrogancy and cultural hegemony. That is what they have brought to try to impose, behaviors that are unacceptable, to our cultures. This is what they have brought to us as an African continent. So there's nothing that we should be proud of, that we should be, saying that we are fearful because we are going to lose this and this and that, when the relationship with the United States breaks out. The only thing which we are going to lose is our chains that they have put on us for a very long time. That is the only thing which we have to lose if we break up, break off this relationship with the United States. Thank you so much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame. Really, that's a nice ending. If there is anything to lose, then it will be that shackle, that chain that they have put on us. I wish we have the time to continue, and because the topic is so interesting, but some of them, even the questions that we derive as we go through this session, can be another topic for another day. So it takes time, because, for example, some people say, is it really necessary for Africa to align either to the US or with the US or with China? Can't Africa be by itself a superpower? And because none of them, actually, both sides cannot grow without Africa. We know where the resources are. But that's another topic. But of course, if we compare what the US is doing versus China, then China is definitely the option.
So actually, it is not about that we need to side with anyone, and we are not, even what we are doing here, we are not trying to side with anyone, but rather we are trying to carry out what is called strategic analysis, because we need to have what President Macron, I heard him, he was mentioning strategic autonomy. We need to have strategic independence as Africans, but we also need to be pragmatic to understand that this is where majority of our interests are. So when we side with the United States, when majority of many Africans, of course, some African countries on the continent side with the United States, it doesn't mean that there's many good things that the United States is bringing, but they are doing it as humans, as good humans, because in many instances, Africans have been forgiving even to the colonial powers. Imagine Georgia Meloni is trying to visit Ethiopia. She's going to visit Ethiopia. So in a few days, she's going to visit Ethiopia. So, but Italy came and attacked Ethiopia and killed the Ethiopian people. So the Africans are forgiving. This is a gesture. This is just a gesture. But this good behavior of Africans, this forgiving nature of Africans has been turned into, in many cases, has been turned against us. And they have turned against us and become bullies and started bullying, our politeness, our welcoming behavior, our forgiving nature. They have turned it into a weakness. Yeah. Okay, so it is not about siding with anyone, but rather it is about understanding what is at stake at a particular period in time. Like today, we said our growth has been not because of the West for the last 30 years, but that growth which we have been experiencing, it has been because of China, our relationship with China, our trade with China. We mentioned the figures that our trade with China is more than $360 billion. They in just a period of 30 to 40 years. Our trade with the United States, which has been here for almost 300 years, ever since they started taking our people here as slaves to the United States, is 55 billion, for Christ's sake. This is unacceptable. You see, so somebody is stealing from us. But we are still good people. We are still welcome people. We smile at people like Kamala Harris when she comes, to Africa. She's been to Ghana. People smile and they dance for her. And she comes to Tanzania, they smile. But these people don't think they are stupid people because they are doing this. Is because it is in our nature to be welcoming people and be forgiving. We are welcoming Georgia Meloni in Ethiopia when she's coming. She's coming very soon. Not because we are stupid people. We know what Italy did to Ethiopia at the Battle of Adwan. They killed many of our people. But because we are good people, that's why we decided to, smile and forgive, and we want world peace. So the purpose of aligning with anyone or not aligning with anyone, us having this strategic relationship, is not that we have abandoned our strategy, of strategic, independence on the continent, but because we want world peace, we are looking for a solution, and a solution which will maintain world peace. When Nkrumah was part of the people, one part of the leaders who formed the non-aligned movement, it was because he was looking for solutions. The non-aligned movement was looking to stop the Cold War, the nuclear war, which was looming during that period. And so that should be our approach, that we should speak out against the militarization. Nkrumah used to speak out against militarization in broad daylight. He would say, why do you talk about peace while you are adding more money in weapons? The United States is spending over $1 trillion on military, on militarization. What is it for? It's for killing people. $1 trillion. He's spending $1 trillion on killing people. Weapons, what are they for? It is for killing, it's for war, it's for killing innocent people. They're not going to kill animals. They are spending on it to kill people. So how do you talk about democracy? And how do you talk about peace? At the same time, you are spending $1 trillion. Why don't you spend this $1 trillion on humanitarian activities? Spend this in giving housing to the homeless people in California and Los Angeles. Spend this, in bailing out people, in paying for health insurance to the more than 50 million people in the United States who have no health insurance. Spend this on peace, but not on militarization. So if you are spending this much money and you're talking about democracy and peace, and this is where Nkrumah said, no, you cannot be talking about peace, while you are spending more on war. You are preparing for war. You see? So this is where we stand as Africans, that we should be willing to stand where our interests are, not because we want to align, but whenever you look at where your interests are, of course, you will sometimes look as if you are aligning with somebody else. But it's not because we are aligning with them, but these people, whether it's the Chinese or Russians, those people, they will be the ones, or they are the ones who are protecting our interests right now. Our interests are tied to them, not because we love them or not because they love us, but it's because our current interests are aligned with theirs. And that is world peace, and that is world stability, international stability, and that is the growth of the international economy, and that is the growth of our economy, and that is what we want. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Really, I'm glad that you decided to react on that one in terms of, alliance. But of course, yeah, it went deep. But very good. I like everything what we have today, and a very good engagement from our audience here as well. The number, even if first of all, we are through with the discussion that we have prepared for you tonight. I see that in Accra it's very hot. You are sweating, Kwame. You cannot unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. I said it's very hot in Accra. We can see you are
Yeah,
sweating.
yeah, yeah. It's a little bit hot in here.
Okay.
So, but it's no problem.
Regardless of that, you bear here with us to deliver this important message. Now, yeah, we are through with our discussion. What we have planned today for ourselves and also for you mainly, to educate ourselves as Africans what's happening in the world and why Africa should be concerned and play a role in this, important global political dynamics. It's a matter of security as well. It's economical issue as well. It's very very important. But of course, we as promised, we will give some few minutes if Kwame allows. We will dedicate few minutes to react, to complement or answer to your questions and comments here. Even if the number is not, we know that there should be a great deal of people that should tune to this channel, and because it is education. We are not here for a click and bait. We are purely concerned in creating awareness, research based awareness. That's what we are bringing, and on top of it, of course, ultimately the goal is to give it that pan-African perspective. But those of you who were here, I see that it was a solid one and people were continuously engaged. I mean, people cannot handle education, research based talk. They are, in this TikTok world or a 1 minute video thing, people don't have the patience to listen to things. Now, actually, okay, let me start this. It's not from chronological, so I go from the recent to the first one. The last one is the EU does not consider Taiwan as a sovereign country. That's K saying that. Now, the Pan African Society Community Forum said neither China or USA will allow war on their own soil. Like Ukraine, they will foster a proxy war on African soil. Am I getting that? Our leaders need to smell the coffee. We are reacting instead of taking preemptive action. Definitely, that's actually, if okay, you missed the beginning part, but Kwame mentioned, beside what we do on this platform, we are also doing some works on the ground, and that is of course to mobilize supports and what we can do when, at least for those leaders who stand and said no, and because of that they get bullied for their pan-African stand or for their nationalism in their own country. So there are some things or projects that we are doing on the ground, but we definitely hear you. Instead of reacting, we should be also taking preemptive actions. Somebody said, okay, we are proud of Eritrea, yes, for saying no in the UN during the Ukraine-Russia vote. I believe that's Stanky vote. New Africa actually said Africa is okay already being affected about this South China Sea thing. And then in Africa and in the diaspora, the AU need to call us home so we can prepare. I totally agree. Definitely. I think Ghana is a pioneer. Was it the year of 2019? It was
The year of return.
the year.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. So Mahlet has gone off. But what we will do is that we'll continue to attend to your comments Mahlet will come back shortly.
Yeah.
But again, what we
Something is
wanted to say,
happening. Yeah.
yeah, Mallet, you had gone off. You had gone off, so I was still holding a little bit,
Good.
and I
Yeah.
wanted
Good.
our audience. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So what we've mentioned definitely. Those are the effects that are likely to happen to the African continent, but it doesn't mean that we should not act. We are here not only to complain and analyze, but bring with the solutions also. That is why Mallet has mentioned that if you go at the beginning of this video, at this presentation, you will see at the beginning of this interview, you see that we put down some, solutions which we are doing, the actions which we are doing. So you need to come out and support us. You need to, to contribute also in the best way you can. Share this video because we need the channel to grow to the level whereby, this kind of conversation goes out to majority of the African continent. Why? For information purposes and also engagement with those people who are supposed to matter on this continent. Those people in the positions of power. We want to have that one-on-one conversation with them. Not that right now we are not trying to have that conversation with them. We are still pushing to have those conversations with them. But again, when we grow to that level, with your support, of course, and your contribution, whether it is $1 or $2, you can reach out to Mallet in the email section. In the comment section, you will find the email, and contribute to the channel, and also share the videos, watch them and share them with others so that this information can go out there. So we said that the African Union can engage in a lot of activities. We need to be assertive out there as Africans because we are going to be affected and we need to speak out against this. But we also need to understand that the United States is a bully and it doesn't respect agreements. If it is not respecting agreements, which it had with China, Paris Agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, is not respecting this. It just bullies. So it's likely that all our agreements also, which we have had with it, whether you are talking about AGOA, we have seen, the United States pulling Ethiopia out of AGOA. These agreements, the United States will also continue to bully even us when we rise to the position of power, economic power, to that level also. If our economy as Africans grows to that level of more than maybe 15 trillion, the United States will start seeing us as a threat and start blackmailing us. It will even encourage some member states to secede from the African continent and come out of the African Union. It will engage in that kind of behavior to try to sabotage the growth on the African continent. So we need to be aware of this, that the United States is not a reliable partner. So if you have any leader who is siding with the United States on our African continent, just know that is a sellout. That is an absolute sellout and is a very dangerous person, not only to his nation, but to the whole African continent. That is a very dangerous person, and that person, we should do everything we can to remove them from power. So Africa has to face the United States on with its own interests and say this gross violation of international law, not international, what it calls rules-based order. That is not, what we are following. We are following the United Nations Charter and we are following international law. Okay, so we need to stand out as Africans and mention this, that this is what is going to happen. As Africans, we are going to face the international law. We are not going to face your rules-based order. What you call rules-based order, which is white supremacy, we are not for that. And then it is time for Africa also to present, in this declining, period of the United States, it is Africans, right now, it is our time also to present Pan-Africanism as a mainstream idea, as a political system. Okay, it is time to put Pan-Africanism on the table. We have seen China has its own political system and economic system. It is time for us also to present Pan-Africanism as an alternative political economic model, to neoliberalism, this Western system that has impoverished us and taken, food from our mouth, which has stolen our resources to build Europe and the United States and the Western world, Canada and Australia and all these countries, which are rich on the back of our resources and our human resources, material human resources. So it's time for Pan-Africanism, to be a mainstream, idea. And that is why we are here. And so that is why we are asking for your support, in this, whatever we are doing. So the more you support us, the more we will stay here, the more we will push and be on the front line, because not all of us can be on the front line. Some people will be on the front line, some people will be on the back, some people will be in the sides. So if you are in the sides or you are in the back to support us and push us forward, then we will continue to do the good work. Thank you so much. Until we meet you again, thank you for watching. We are really glad for all those people who are here. We are happy that you are here to support the channel. Continue to do the same until we have thousands of people watching this channel live when we are presenting. We need to go from 40, 50, 100 to 2,000 to 3,000, even 10,000 people watching live when we are doing these presentations. Thank you so much, Mahlet. And thank you so much to the audience, and good night, good afternoon, and good evening, and good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So there are some comments and questions, but maybe I will forward you. I know this question, who asked it, so maybe privately, and then we can, the Pan-African Society has asked you to deliver, if you can script this and send it to Pigin, but I will send you the message in
yes, so I will do, what we will do is that we will send it in the comment section. Let people write it in the comment section when the video finishes. I will respond to them in the comment section. I'll come and respond to those questions in the comment section.
Okay, so please, Pan-African Society, place that question on the comment section. And there's somebody also who said,
yeah, that is when the video finishes.
When the video finishes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's somebody also, all of you who have a question, please put it when the video finish on the comment section, when this live session ends. So we will meet again on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we have an important and exciting, actually, a topic regarding the direction of where the European Union is going. Are they splitting from US and going by themselves? There are some important, really, developments, and we are going to analyze that from head to toe. So until we meet again next Tuesday, stay blessed, stay safe. Whatever you do, wherever you are, you can always be a Pan-African ambassador. There are so many ways to do it. Have a good evening, have a good day. Bye bye. Thank you, Kwame.